702.
Weird and wonderful.
Buddha the monk is here. Savyathemonk das Prabhu. Some call him Savvy the monk. He's here with me. We are going to be talking about the very important subject of unity in diversity. Buddha, good evening to you, and thank you so much for coming through, man.
Good evening, Aubrey. Good evening, 702 listeners. I'm happy to be here again.
It's a big conversation, unity in diversity.
Yeah.
Many people have argued that it is it's an aspiration that will never be reached. Yeah. Many people have said that it is an aspiration that is good, but lacks the legs to be lived out in practical life, in real life. Talk to me about what you understand unity in diversity to mean.
It begins with a particular worldview that we have. Generally, the worldview is more stressing on the diversity, which has to be celebrated. There's diversity, but then there's also a unity on many levels. Materially, there's a unity as a species, for example, human beings. And there's a unity, as you mentioned earlier, that we share a common home, this planet. So we are all invested in having a good life, invested in happiness. Therefore, we have to see that we become caretakers of each other, caretakers of the planet. And it goes even deeper that we have to understand unity above the bodily differences, and we should go to the substance which underlies all reality. So unfortunately, we're living in a world currently where there is this secular humanism, which wants to say man is the measure of all things, and therefore is stressing indirectly the individual. And the individual has his own desires. When we look into previous cultures, when you look into wisdom cultures, we find that the stress was that the individual was only complete if he or she was serving the collective. There was a culture where my duties towards the collective are more important than my demands for the rights that I'm owed. So the worldview is what is taking us further away from realizing the beauty and the strength that we can get in unity and diversity.
There's an implied aspiration whenever we speak of unity and unity in diversity. There's an implied aspiration, and I want to talk a little bit about that implied aspiration, because I think that's probably where the problem sometimes lives. The idea that peace should be the reality of unity in diversity. Could it be that the acrimony that we see, because we are so diverse with so many different interests and aspirations, not only as the human species, but as microorganisms? I mean, viruses are trying to dominate the world.
They want their share.
They want their share. They want their share. Ideas want their share. And they sometimes play themselves out in different embodiments, right? Is peace a realistic aspiration when we speak unity in diversity? Because I suppose we could have unity in diversity, but it's just a big chaotic thing.
Well, peace is integral to unity. Why I say peace is integral to unity is that, as you hinted, the aspiration is an unspoken one. It's a natural aspiration that we want to have a central uniting principle. And that's because the fact of the matter is like that. So if we begin by discussing ourselves from where we all agree it is a fact. We all are conscious beings. We are all aware of what's going on. So consciousness is a universal principle. If we start from there, then we can understand that it's not a matter of your loss is my win and your win is my loss, but then the resources are finite. We, on the other hand, are not meant to just plunder, but we are meant to be caretakers of the resources. So the piece would be, what is the uniting factor? What creates the relationship between all of us? I give an example. In the body, there are many different parts. The brain, the heart, the liver, the pancreas, all sorts of organs are there. For life to work, all of them have to do their part. If the heart decides not to serve by pumping blood throughout the system, then the whole thing collapses. If the brain short circuits and doesn't do its part, then we don't navigate the world properly. So the principle of unity is that we all have common interests. We need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to be clothed, we need to experience our families without being afraid of our neighbor.
Yeah.
So those desires are something which come from deep within, that we want tranquility, we want peace, we want unity, because we are made from that. Consciousness is from that realm.
I want you to talk to me as we continue on this philosophical tack, because I'm going to get practical in a few moments' time. Talk to me about the idea of equality. So very often, whenever we speak of unity and diversity, we, as you've already pointed out, that there's a natural implied idea that actually we're looking for peace. But very often the peace is eludes us, because in our diversity we may feel like we are not equal partners in this unity thing. As we speak of this idea of unity in diversity, is the idea of equality implicit in that idea? And is equality achievable, or is it part of the reality that we must have a dominating principle that is going to manage all of these organs? In other words, as much as the body has these different organs and each organ must play its part, but do these organs play an equal part? Who decides what equality is, and is that an achievable reality?
Equality is there on the spiritual platform, at the level of life, of consciousness. But at the same time, there's always a hierarchy within the roles that individuals have to play to preserve a unity. That's the beauty of the diversity. In diversity, we are bringing in a lot of different needed skill sets or resources. Just in the analogy of the body, the kidneys are doing their part, the pancreas doing its part, the liver, everything is contributing to the well-being of the whole. So they are equal in terms of they are important for the overall health, but then you can always live without an arm, for example. You could live without both your legs. Although if you have both your legs, you can run faster, get to places easier.
Sure.
So,
but you can't live without your pumping heart.
Yes.
Right.
So we have to zoom in on what is the hierarchy within our resources. So I propose that the body is one asset. The body consists of the mind. That's another asset. The intelligence is also another asset. And higher than that, the person who is viewing all these assets, wants to use them, the consciousness, is the most important. And so everything has to be arranged with the consideration of all souls, all conscious beings getting their needs fulfilled. And that then goes into a deeper conversation. What are the needs of consciousness? And is our world geared to fulfill those? You see, if we are geared to fulfill the needs of just the body and the senses, then those never fulfill anyone. We're experiencing that. That becomes too much diversity and less unity. But if we go to consciousness, then all are conscious. It includes the animals, the plants, the human beings.
But are animals, in that analogy, conscious at the same level as human beings are? I mean, they're probably conscious, but at the level of the consciousness that is afforded by the capacity that animals have for consciousness. Or is consciousness living outside a particular capacity? What do you mean that everything is conscious?
Life. Whatever is living, the symptom of
sentience.
Yes, yeah? Sentience means consciousness.
Right.
Of course, the human being then has a higher ranking because he's got the software in terms of mind and intellect to arrange and move the resources of nature better. So the responsibility of becoming a caretaker for the animals, for the
Didn't you just walk into humanism right there, bruh? I mean, I don't know whether rocks have a conference and talk about the consciousness of rocks. And so I don't know whether that happens or not.
No.
Right? And I don't know whether lions sit somewhere in the savannah and talk about a lion-centric consciousness. I don't know. But is that not the problem that we have with regards to unity in diversity, that we as human beings believe we are the ones that are the purveyors and custodians of the highest form of consciousness in this realm? Could it be that we're wrong?
We have to take knowledge from authorized sources. So in any wisdom culture, we understand the role of the human being as the custodian. We can see also it manifests in this world that if you just stop the human beings from doing all that they're trying to do, then forests will grow, the animals' population will increase, everyone else will go on based on the parameters of
So are we
their
not
lives.
the problem?
Yes, we are the problem because we have not been trained to actually act as human beings. What's happening now is that the form is human, 2 legs, 1 face, like that, but the consciousness is less than animalistic.
011-883-0702. My guest is Savvy the Monk, Swura the Monk, Savyathemonk Das Prabhu. We're talking about this idea called diversity in unity in diversity, and whether it's practical. And what are the issues that impede it? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about this. Can the Christian live with the Muslim? Can the LGBTI community live with heteronormative individuals? Can you see where I'm going? Yeah, give me a call. I'd love to hear from you. Can the Kalanga live with the Zulu? Yeah. Can we have a situation where we are considerate of each other's contributions to this organizing principle of consciousness? What is it? What is its priority? Give me a call. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Why is it that with all of the knowledge that exists, with all of the understanding that exists, we are further down the path of chaos than we've ever been? Why is it that with all of the books that have been written about this very idea of coexistence, of acceptance and tolerance, that we have become worse at it than ever before. To the point where we are even having conversations about the very feasibility of unity in diversity. At a certain point in time, Sbuda, we were very, very moved by the idea that we can become a nation.
The Rainbow Nation.
The Rainbow Nation. Remember that time? Because we believed in the ideal of unity in diversity. But certain practical issues started to rear their heads. Who should be dominant? For which reasons? Who holds the position of consciousness in this diversity? Who is the organizing principle in this situation? Does the skin, which is exposed to the elements, get to say that I should be the one that makes the decisions for the body? Or is it the heart, without which we cannot have the functioning skin if it is not functioning? Who gets to say, I'm in charge? And is it possible to have a situation where there is this harmony without a particular component being in charge? Or is the very idea of diversity and unity a farce?
Unity and diversity is very difficult on the material platform. We're struggling with it because the material platform, as I said, stresses the diversity. When we flip it and we look at ourselves from the spiritual perspective, then we try to trace what's the source of consciousness. Then we come to the supreme conscious being. There is a source of all energies, and that source of all energies claims us in practically all wisdom cultures that we are his parts and parcels, that our interests actually lie in our connection with him. Just like the hand, if it's cut from the body, it looks like a hand, but it can't function as a hand. Unless it's connected to the arm and the body, then it's useless. So what's happening currently is that the parts and parcels of consciousness, individual consciousness, are now embedded in this physicality. And there's plenty of variety: black, white, green, yellow, economic class, racial classes, political parties. And so in that misidentified position, we gather around in that misidentification of brown, yellow, and black, and we take shelter of misconception. So we need to have a new way of seeing. We need the light of transcendental spiritual knowledge, which elevates our vision of ourselves and which liberates us from the conditioning that sits on us and makes us think we are the embodiment. So the education of wisdom is lacking thoroughly in the world, that even in religious circles, we are still taking shelter of the designations or the nomenclatures of the schools of religion. We are missing the essential understanding. We are not of this world. We are here temporarily. What is the goal for consciousness? When the body passes, the consciousness needs to return to source. So if we don't see this world, ourselves, the resources as belonging to the Supreme Being, then we manifest a criminal diversity.
011-883-0702. I want to take a break. One of the things, Spuda, that I always find very, very strange is how those that are most akin to each other can have the most fervent of fights. The Ukraine-Russian war, these are brothers. Historically and otherwise, these are brothers. The acrimony between the Muslim and the Jew.
These are brothers.
These are
cousins.
brothers. Yeah? These are brothers. The tribalistic fights we see here on the African continent between the Kikuyu and the Luo.
Hutus and Tutsis.
These are brothers. Brothers. They have literally shared a womb at some point. And their fight is more fervent because both of them know the secrets of their existence and how they can lead. Yeah? How do we overcome this acrimony, particularly that comes from people who are brothers in so many senses? I want to take that conversation after the break, but I'd like for you to give me a call. Is unity in diversity a real thing? We are now in a political reality in South Africa where that idea is no longer very popular. In fact, the ideas that drive the political conversation now are about how we can go back to an idea where somebody dominates. We come from there. We used to call it apartheid.
Yeah. It's our turn now.
It's our turn now. Could it be that somewhere we lost a step, and how do we get back to it? How do we preoccupy ourselves with the idea of a shared humanity without the challenges of who gets to dominate? I'm really looking forward to this conversation on 011-883-0702. When I come back, I'll take your calls. Is unity in diversity a practical reality?
Weird and wonderful.
Indeed, this is the weird and the wonderful on the Aubrey Masango show. My guest is Sbuda the monk, Savvy the monk, as some know him as, or AKA Savvy the monk. I call him Sbuda the monk. And we're talking about the very elusive idea of diversity in unity in diversity. Is it practical? Is it a possibility? Or is it just a sweet ideal? There was a time when we held it close to our hearts, and because of our various failures here and there, it is no longer an idea that we cherish. We laugh at it because of our failures. Yeah, give us a call. I'd love to hear from you. Lots of calls, and I think we need to entertain them. But I do want you to perhaps, as you think about this, help me understand why is it that brothers, people that are brothers, sisters, tend to be the ones that fight the hardest. I think it's called sibling rivalry. Every time I've looked at any acrimony in the world and I see long-standing fights, you can literally trace back to when these people actually shared a womb. Why is that? Why is that?
One consideration is how familiarity breeds contempt. We are, instead of investigating our inner dimension of life, we tend to be outward facing. So a lot of time is spent in looking at who has what going for them. And envy festers in the heart. So someone who's envious, instead of noting the good qualities or celebrating the good run of a friend, a neighbor, wants to drag them down. Not necessarily because they themselves will then shine, but just that misery loves company. So what we can see, then we can think about, contemplate, and lust for what others has, grows, and then from lust, greed. Greed degrades into anger, violence. And once anger and violence take place, then we lose our intelligence. Then we can't discriminate. What am I actually doing to my neighbor? And we exercise the most harshest, brutal acts on those that were near and dear to us. So, because of this envy, instead of service spirit, I should be my brother's keeper. I am your servant. Krishna says in the Gita that every living being is his eternal part and parcel. But they are struggling because they have not been in control of their mind and senses. So when the mind and senses are lost to purpose, and the purpose is, I am the servant of the servant of the servant. That is the natural position of all souls. If I am a servant of your servant, then I'm funching on humility. But if I think I'm the enjoyer, the controller, then I'm envious of all the others who think similarly. Therefore fighting and brutality.
011-883-0702. David is in Johannesburg South. David, good evening to you.
Aubrey, I must start by saying welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
We really missed you, my brother.
Oh, much appreciated. Been back for 2 weeks now, Dave.
No, I know. I've been listening for the whole 2 weeks.
All right.
Imagine anything different.
Thank you, sir.
Your replacement was unfortunately not up to your standards.
Oh, come on, Dave. Come.
Yourself.
Tell me what is on your mind, Dave.
I will.
Yeah.
Your most interesting guest, or one of your top 10 guests, is with you tonight, and his opinions are highly valued.
Yeah.
But I want to start with a quip about the human body analogy that you've been using. You know the joke about the different organs in the body arguing about who's the boss?
Yeah, I've heard that one. Yeah.
And you know what shut them all up? was the orifice right at the bottom?
It's probably the rectum, eh?
That's the situation we've got to in South Africa now, where it's the orifice at the bottom that's calling the shots. And that's a very sad situation. The last time we had servant leadership, we've been talking about the servant now.
Yeah.
The last time we experienced servant leadership was dear Madiba. The one who went onto the rugby field with a number 6 jersey.
Yeah.
The one who actively worked on creating the Rainbow Nation. The one who actively worked on saying, let us see if we can please create unity out of all this diversity we've got here. Because diversity has been a problem everywhere in the world. If you think about even Canada, it doesn't have to be different races.
Yep.
It's that the Frenchies in Canada and the English in Canada, they still don't get along.
Yep.
They still argue with one another, and there's still a strong cultural component to that. It's the same where even America is probably going backwards, largely because it's becoming more heterogeneous instead of becoming more homogeneous. You think about the way in which all the successful original countries in the world were formed. They were formed around a cultural and linguistic unity. All the Froggies spoke French, they all understood one another. All the Germans spoke German, and they all understood one another. So taking a colonial history and saying, was it the right thing to put 9, 10, 11 different languages into one country and different cultures? You only have to go to the Hutus and the Tutsis to find the answer to that. You only have to look at Nigeria today to find the answer to that. You have to look at any of the African countries where these borders have been drawn without understanding the linguistic and cultural milieu that they were in, to see that where they have drawn these borders, they have caused problems every time where they've tried to create unity out of diversity. I'm beginning to worry whether we can get back to the days of Mandela, because there have been so much racism and racist laws and race talk, not just from odd characters like the EFF top leadership. It's even come from the ANC. It's even come from Jacob Zuma. It's even come from our present state president has made awful comments about.
So are you suggesting, Dave, are you suggesting, David, therefore, that it is a nice to have idea that has no real manifestation in reality?
It's an ideal which has not worked anywhere in the world. You can't show me one successful country that has the kind of diversity that South Africa has, unfortunately.
Dave, I need to stop you there. Let me stop you there. David in Johannesburg South. Interesting stuff. So are we saying that perhaps then we should impose Afrikaans upon everybody?
Yeah.
you know.
It gets back to that. Then again, like someone has to dominate.
Yeah.
Whereas we're elevating the conversation that let's rise above these lower stratas of thought, body, race.
And maybe we need to also have a conversation about what a successful country means.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to have that conversation. But let's speak to Sala in Germiston. Hi, Sala.
Hello, Aubrey. How are you?
Very, very good. Thank you, Sala. What's on your mind, sir?
Saying diversity in unity can be encouraged by human interactions.
Mm.
And how do human interaction is depending on encouraging competitive sport, especially from the community. Projects like building halls where children can compete in sports and football and all the other various sports. But if there's no human interaction, the diversity cannot be be cultured.
Yeah.
Look, during Mandela's days, when South Africa got independent, there was unity in diversity. Like a new dawn was being born. But all this is degraded now because there is no human interaction. If there is human interaction through sports,
Sala, we're losing you there, but I think we get to the gist of what you are saying. But some may argue, Spuda, that we've been having human interaction, and our human interaction is a testament of our failure in this pursuit of the unity and diversity. And maybe we shouldn't have human interaction. In fact, we should get rid of all humanity. Then only will we see and many so-called terrorist doctrines have been moved by that idea that let's do away with a significant group of what is known as humanity in order for us to reset the button.
Yeah, it's a perennial idea where those who think a certain way think we need more of us and less of them. Yeah. So again, the education of a people is very important. These ideas of unity and diversity should be taught from preschool with the spiritual aspect heavily enforced. There's many resource books from Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Krishna consciousness, whatever it may be, African schools of thought, Kemet. We should milk these books of wisdom to understand the principles that were meant to bring out the divine family of humanity. We are missing the divinity that exists in all of us, and we are just trying to fight each other for temporary things. Therefore, each one wants to align with that which looks like themselves, sounds like themselves.
Yeah.
It's a primitive idea. It's not evolved. So education, as Mandela had put, is a very important thing. And this education shouldn't be just about matter. It should be about consciousness.
How do I say, listen, I want what Spuda's talking about, but I'm worried about being exploited. I want to be magnanimous and generous. I want to be in a position where I am guided by these lofty divine principles, right? Because I see the value in them. But unfortunately, I live in this human interaction with people that aren't at that level. And I will then be exploited. How do I make sure that I'm not exploited in this pursuit?
First, understand that you are already being exploited. You have a wealth, which is your consciousness. You have an eternal wealth. And you have forgotten that wealth. Instead, you are running after the ephemeral of this world. So what happens is that if one evolves in consciousness, their perception of reality also changes. What we may think will be exploitation actually becomes the source of great happiness because one is contributing. There's a remuneration in service. and it is a wealth of heart. We have not been exposed to the wealth of the heart. We are exposed to the wealth of the external environment.
You're suggesting, therefore, that we would then re-look at what success means?
Yes. We are now riding on a train going east of materialism. We've imbibed those values of capitalism, consumerism. And then we're realizing it's the wrong direction, and now we're running in the opposite direction.
But the train is still going that way.
So,
Nare is in Aubrey. Good evening to you, Nare.
Yes. I just want to say that the problem of us as human beings, we are easily programmed. For example, say yourself, like as in development, you go and live in UK there, and then your child is born there and grew up there. Himself as a developed person, going to see himself as somebody you won't even relate to, like your tribe. You know what I'm saying? It's easily for us to be programmed, by the environment, where you stay around there. So the whole idea as well, it comes with, as human beings, we don't like each other. That's nature. The other day I was sitting with this guy who's a JMPD, and then one guy with a security guard was patrolling around there. Both of them, they speak like Venda, because I know both of them. I thought they would have a chat and talk to each other since both of them were Venda, but they won't. I could see that the other guy was reserved. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like you can't force that unity. It's people. I think people, we have this thing of like choices. People sometimes they choose. They don't want to associate themselves with certain people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the secret of life is respecting. If I don't like you, Aubrey, I must not hate you. I must just respect you, and that I don't like you the way you are. But I think the most important thing is respect. If we can respect each other, regardless our differences, or if I don't like you, whatever, I think we can have a better world.
Nare in Aubrey, RESPECT. Yeah. Respect. Azi respect. Respect. Where's the respect?
Very important principle.
Yeah. We've been talking largely about interhuman relations. Interspecies relations?
Yes.
Spoke earlier on about the fact that the viruses are giving us a run for our money. Yeah? We've just had 2 years of lockdown where one virus in its very mutative forms has been slapping us around. Yeah?
Reminding us.
Yeah. What about other species? Their role, our respect to them, their respect to us. Talk to me about that. Is there a conversation to be had about this? Because our conversation is very, very limited to us.
Yes.
And that might also be part of the problem.
Yes, it is that our vision of reality is quite diminished. We are only, you could say, conditioned to recognize the human species. So therefore there's also speciesism. In one sense, violence begets violence. If we analyze how much slaughterhouses we have, goats, fish, cows, all sorts of animals are being slaughtered by the millions every minute. And that energy of violence comes back to us. And so we wonder why we are easily and quickly just stab you, rob you, shoot you, bomb you. So without the central hub of the wheel, the supreme, divine, loving Father, our guardian, as the celebrated being who harmonizes all conscious living beings, individual and unique as they are, we will not be able to see our brothers and sisters correctly, meaning the ant, the cow, the goat, the tree, the fish. These are all our brothers and sisters at the level of spirit, of consciousness. That conversation and that education is lacking in our educational system. Therefore, we can only manifest limited awareness where we are just thinking tribal, racial, financial class, etc.
Sexual, yeah. As we close, it's a big topic, it's a huge topic. Is unity and diversity, after this trip that we've just gone through in this hour, a practical reality?
Yes, it is a practical reality, but we have to work for it, just as we work for so many other things. Once we understand that our best prospects are in unity, then we will police those who do not speak towards uniting us. We will be able to point out those who divide and conquer us. We'll be able to spot the pettiness of trying to be separatists, where we want to stress our own kind over others. So it is a practical thing, but we have to start with educating ourselves, getting the right type of knowledge that will help us to act differently. Without updating the software, then you're going to be operating at DOS or at Vista when there's, a higher operating system.
Here's somebody that, I don't know, I'm going to read it.
Read it.
In a wild, barbaric, seventh world country such as South Africa, your guest is totally out of place. He would be more at home in a first world country. Too soft-spoken, gentle and humane in South Africa. We are a guttural, violent killers, says this individual, who obviously doesn't believe in the practicality of the idea of unity and diversity. What do you have to say to our good brother there?
Yeah, he's speaking his realizations about the country. Unfortunately, we have a very violent history because there's been a lot of hurt and harm and division. And so that's like programmed into our DNA. So ideas of unity always sound very far-fetched unless we have such illumined leaders like we had in Mandela, an ideal. We had our alpha, and from his story of adversity to triumph, we could aspire for something greater like a rainbow nation. And a rainbow so beautiful with all the colors. So in the wake of the reality of division and fighting and corruption, we are now seeing the rainbow as just a big black dark cloud full of thunder and lightning. We have to maintain that hope and work towards realizing it.
Savyasachi Das Prabhu, Sbuddha the monk, Savi the monk. How do people get in touch with you, my brother?
You can get me on Instagram, on YouTube, TikTok as Savya the Monk, Savya the Monk, Savya the Monk, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter.
Always great talking to you. Always a privilege talking to you. Much appreciated.